painting to photography, from beadwork to woodworking. KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University presents Artbeat. Artbeat highlights the work and accomplishments of local artists from in and around Winona. Support for Artbeat is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
The COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc on many industries, and the performing arts is no exception. In fact, it is getting hit exceptionally hard. With show cancellations and stay-at-home orders, there aren't many opportunities for artists to perform, and that loss of performance means loss of livelihood for many. Today on Artbeat, we speak with Rich MacDonald, local performing musician and Professor Emeritus at Winona State University, to hear his thoughts on the hurdles artists currently face and how we might move forward in new ways in the future. I'm Bill Stoneberg. Stick around for the conclusion of our discussion with Rich MacDonald on the performing arts during and after COVID on Artbeat.
If I were a student right now, especially a music student, I might consider just taking a year off.
Yeah.
And really, rather than trying to figure stuff out in this weird environment, I'd spend some time and money getting a little studio happening in my house or my apartment or whatever, and I'd take some lessons with these people that are just available.
Oh, yeah.
You could really learn a lot, from some of these people that you wouldn't have a chance, any kind of outside chance of connecting with them if it weren't for where we are now. So there's another example of maybe, there's an opportunity that people could grab onto.
I think so.
Again,
for sure.
I don't quote me on telling students not to go to school.
I know I've been careful of that as well, but I have had a few conversations with students where they're contemplating that, and I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense in this time, I think, and especially if you're, like you said, a music student or an art student, you can go and do your practice and learning. And, there are people out there who aren't performing, so they're available to teach and things like that. So,
yeah, or, the other thing you could do is if you want to maintain the stuff you're doing at a particular institution like Winona State, you could just take 6 credits or, Take just a few credits, live in Winona, and do some stuff.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to necessarily just not go to school at all. But that's I guess that's the glass half full. But I'm because I've had so many. One of the things teaching all these years, when word gets around that okay, Rich is handling this jazz program at Winona State. Well, I'm on tour, so I'm going to let him know. And then I'd get these emails from all over the place of bands coming through or, artists looking to get a guest artist gig. Well, now that's turning around to where, hey, I'm available for lessons. I'm available to perform, in absentia, like for example, to do a recording, like I'm doing with this friend out in Seattle. Those kinds of things are now available for people. So, yeah, who knows? It could be a good thing in the long run. But I think we're missing a lot. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's just hard right now. I feel for these younger players. There's been a lot of bands come out of Winona State in the region. The Midwest Music Fest has birthed a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know what these guys are doing. I haven't talked to, Nick Elstead, is the former student. He has a Sleeping Jesus band. I don't know what they're up to. I don't know if they're recording or what they're doing.
Yeah.
Are they?
From what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, or about to.
And then Mason Smith and Dante DeGrazia and Ryan Amble, that group, Karate Chop. I don't know what they're doing, but it's of course, they would go up and play at First Avenue for not much anyway, so they're not used to making a lot of money. But my point is that maybe these guys are gonna find ways of delivering some stuff in this space.
I think so too. Yeah. Well, I know Karate Chop Silence did a drive-in concert in Rochester not too long ago.
Did they?
I've been to one of those, and I absolutely loved it. To tell you the truth, it was
cool.
Spaced out, and you just set up your lawn chair beside your car, and we had a grill and stuff going, and it was a really good time. Maybe there's avenues like that out there that become more popular. So maybe there's opportunity.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's what I mean. I feel for these guys because they've kind of set themselves up for performing live, and so I hope that they can get some stuff like that going.
Right.
I've got a few things in the works, but they're pretty minimal right now. There's not a lot happening.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and you really got to dig in and try to figure out something I think new and unique to do, or a different way. I mean, it's like we've been set up with this, like a tree down over the road, and there's a cliff on the other side and a cliff on this side. How do you get around it? We're gonna have to invent something.
Get a big chainsaw.
Right. It's an interesting time for sure. Do you think that we will ever go back to like the music world and the performing world we had before, or do you think it's just going to keep evolving after this?
I think a little bit of both, probably.
Okay.
I would think that we'll be able to go back to having audiences eventually. I don't know though. That's one of my concerns. Just from speaking from a purely musician point of view, is whether the audiences are going to feel comfortable the way it was, the way we've had it before. That remains to be seen, I think. But I'm optimistic that people will be like ready to roll. I don't know much about the medical field, but when there's a vaccine that is strong enough and people are comfortable enough with, it could change things. But you bring up an interesting point, whether it'll ever be back the way it was, and that's a good question. I wonder though if where it was really that great. I've played to a lot of places where there's just issues, with getting audiences. That's years ago they used to talk about the entertainment dollar and how, there's only so many places it can go. I'm not sure they use that same term anymore, but what I see is more of a challenge of not so much the dollar as much the attention. People are essentially. We used to sit down and listen to a whole record. We'd listen to a whole album. People are. Everything seems to be like into these little. If it's more than a minute or a minute and a half, forget about it. As I'm working on this pedagogical project, I've been talking to different people about delivery of it. I'm going to spend a lot of time developing this pedagogy. Well, how am I going to get it out to people? And I've been making my own videos, and I'm trying to keep them all to a minute or a minute and a half to just illustrate a point. And so that's another one of those sort of challenges is to really get someone's attention and to hold it for a minute. We're kind of. I find myself the same way. If I see something, a Facebook thing of somebody, if it's somebody I know, I'll listen to it however long it is. But if it's somebody I don't know about, I might only give it a minute or so. So that's kind of the musician's elevator speech. You have to grab them right. That first minute is pretty important.
Exactly.
So, that's one of the weird sort of beyond me kinds of things. I don't have a really good answer for that in terms of kind of how we're dealing with delivery of things. We already talked about the fact that you can't really deliver stuff via CD anymore. So, how are you going to do that? But, I used to keep up, I kind of still keep up with what's going on with Grammys, because especially in the jazz and Latin categories. And there was this Public Enemy's record by this band out of Brooklyn, Darcy James Argue and the Secret Society.
Okay.
What a fantastic project. And the whole thing had video with it. It had a CD. It had... it's like this whole package,
Nice.
Similar to what Maria's doing with Artist Share. Her her latest project, Data Lords, I mentioned earlier, it's a whole package, and people are spending, here's $85, and I'm a contributor on this level, and I get this package from Maria with a nice letter and a sort of an embossed CD or whatever, So these ideas of this Public Enemies project is really an amazing musical project. If you want to look it up there's a thing on YouTube on it that sort of describes it and has some of the music. But again, it's like that multimedia, Music Plus thing, where there's all this story going on, and there's art and there's video and there's, so it's almost like the musician is really entrepreneurial wise. There's a lot of options there.
Right.
If someone is creative enough to do them, to work with them.
Yeah, and that sounds like using the technology to connect with the audience in different ways, with the visuals and the video stuff like that. And that's pretty interesting. Yeah. I like that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's fascinating stuff, and again, that's one of the things that this technology allows us. So again, half full or half empty. But you got to be creative, and you got to find ways of making that all work. This idea of having someone help with a project, like check out Artist Share. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's really clear that you can involve yourself in a project, and then you then can see it come to fruition. Maria's really good about sending people emails on here's what we've done lately. Here's a video on our last session. Here's this. So they keep people apprised of how the project is going. So it's kind of this whole community that's associated with this musical sort of arts project.
Well, it sounds like she's kind of making the that virtual connection with the audience a little more personal too.
Yes, absolutely. She's really good at that. She's a Minnesota composer. She grew up in Windham, Minnesota.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
I was going to go take the whole band to see her. She was going to be her band from New York was going to be at Hopkins Center for the Arts in April, and of course we had to cancel that. But she's one of my favorite artists. She's just a wonderful composer and real down to earth person. I've met her a couple times. But that's an area where it's amazing to see what she's been able to accomplish. The way she's done it, and I don't know. I mean, she's obviously doing well enough to maintain an 18-piece band. So,
so
good for her.
Exactly. Do you think that we've talked a lot about how artists are need to adapt, or how we're going to have to adapt, things like that. And I know that in the past, the artist had to think about the business side of things too. But it seems like now that has been forefront, how do we move forward and make money on this,
if I was a young player in my 20s right now, I would look at teams. I would get a visual artist, I would get a business person, I would get a web person, designer, and I would look at creating teams of people to sort of help produce a product, video people. It's really hard to try to be all of that.
Yeah.
If you can get a team to where, hey, we're going to do this project, and I'd like to do this, and you can start brainstorming. And this is another beautiful thing about being in a liberal arts environment. You have people who have other skills. You have people who have business skills. You have people that have skills, learning skills in all these different disciplines, because that's what it takes. You just can't do it all. You can't be a producer and a musician and a writer and a marketing person and a video editor and that.
Yeah, that's a lot of hats.
I could go on and on. I used to always refer my students to this website. The Berklee College of Music in Boston has this Careers in Music website. Terrific website. It's obviously a it's obviously a commercial for their school. Obviously, they want people to come to school there. But
Right.
man, you talk about all the different A&R stuff, and all the different options there are in the industry, and you start to think about, okay, well, do I know some people that would want to get involved in a project in this sort of way?
Right.
I mean, if I was those guys, we were talking about Sleeping Jesus and Karate Chop and some of those groups, that'd be what I would do. I would start to look for, develop a team, and obviously be willing to share the profits with them, if there are any ever.
Right.
If there aren't, well, then you got to get it all on spec, which everybody's doing so much on spec nowadays anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the way I think that's the way of the future really, is to connect with people who have all this expertise, because as well as I do, when you go to listen to something or to see something online, or it needs to be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The expectation is that it better be of a decent quality,
Right.
and then after that, whatever you have to say or whatever people take from it is but again, the quality part is important. And if you don't know anything about video and you're trying to put videos out there, well,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard
there you
enough.
go.
Artists have to wear a lot of hats anyway when you're an independent artist, But it's hard enough to try to produce a record and play on the record and write the record all at once,
Yep.
I think that's interesting, though, that you bring up this team aspect. Do you think that maybe, because there's a lot of local talent in all different fields of this, So maybe if people start pulling together as teams, you think there'd be maybe more interest or more to share here among everybody, like more locally, local-centric things? Or?
Yeah, well, I think the Midwest Music Fest is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Shakespeare Festival is another good example of that, where
Right.
those are both grassroots efforts that have involved a lot of people with a sort of a shared goal. You could kind of take that in microcosm and put it into a band, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these young students or young people that have a band, and here's the project. Here's my idea, and so it would be in a smaller sort of sphere, if you will. But it certainly could be a thing. The reason I bring up teams is our youngest son is an illustrator, and he worked for this place in New York for a long time called the Strand. It's a bookstore, kind of old school bookstore in Manhattan.
Okay.
And he was offered a job with this company called Nuts.com, which was over in New Jersey, and they had the big sort of Google type of thing where it was, they had a big floor of overlooking Manhattan, and they had all these teams that were working. He was working on web marketing and different things as an illustrator, and those production teams. It's real common in the art world, in the commercial art world.
Okay.
Not as common in music because our teams are the band.
Right.
But the expansion of that idea was something I learned from him. The people he worked with Nuts.com, he had people that were experts in all these different areas, and they'd get together with these big team meetings and figure out their strategies about this and that. And in the art world, he went to school over there at that school in Milwaukee, Milwaukee
Mm-hmm.
Institute of Art and Design, and that was something that they really encouraged, for the artists to get involved with people who have other disciplines that can bring that all together. Mm-hmm. And we go right back to the liberal arts environment. I think there's probably a happy medium there somewhere. Maybe it's not totally liberal arts. Maybe it's more performing arts, and those teams get developed.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe this takes the place of, in the old days we would have record labels, things like that are kind of the gatekeepers.
Yep.
Now we have streaming. Maybe in the future there's something else that takes that place, like a local team of artists and contributors to create local content. I don't know. Maybe that's a silver lining that's coming. I don't know. It's a possibility.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There could be lots of ways that could be something, and of course the beauty of it is that you don't have to necessarily. I mean, you can go to meeting going or Zoom or anything else. You can share screens. You can talk through what you're doing. What you need, of course, the whole thing that sort of centers is vision. And I go back to Maria Schneider. She's not only a great composer and musician, but she's also a visionary. Mm-hmm. She's got a vision of her music and what she wants to say, and that vision then gets shared by all these people, that are involved in the project. And there's money people. I don't know a lot about that, but there are people that know about philanthropy and know about how to, get people involved in a project. Again, based on relationships, based on, I know this kid. Yeah, he's really talented. Let's give him $50 or $100 or whatever, and let's see how he can develop his art. In some ways, it's like a Southeastern Minnesota Arts Council all wrapped up into a little package,
like a smaller group, kind of.
Yeah, like an arts group, And who knows? I mean, I don't know. We're kind of just thinking out loud, but I do think that that's something that I'd be very interested in if I was really looking at developing a career in music. I would really start looking at those options. Who are the people that I really like being around, and the people that that can add something to this project.
Yeah. I think moving forward, we're going to have to think outside the box, really, and think outside the box and work together, like you were saying with the teams, and you got to have vision.
Yep.
I think that's really important. Well, Rich, we're kind of getting to the end of the hour here. Before we go, I'm just kind of curious, what do you think? I mean, it sounds like we're kind of in a transitional period right now, I mean, I know some people want to get back to the way it was. From the things we've discussed today, it doesn't sound to me like we're going back to anything we knew before. It's going to be different no matter what. What do you think the best way is for the audience, for viewers and listeners and people who enjoy art? What do you think the best way is for them to help support artists right now,
Well, that's a really great question. I would say be willing to spend a few dollars. It amazes me that people will spend $8 on a cup of coffee, but they won't, spend $10 on a CD or, to go and get that CD and have it stream or whatever,
Right.
If there's when we do get back to being where things are happening, there's live music happening, pay a cover charge. If you have to pay $5, so what? It's
Right.
one drink or one coffee.
Yeah.
I think that people are getting so used to getting everything for free, that especially when it comes to music anyway.
Yeah.
Because I know I spent a lot of money on this project 2 years ago, and it was all my money, and that's fine. Nobody needs to pay me anything. My point is that I think that people are just not willing to spend on live music, and I don't know why. That's kind of weird for me. I'm just kind of, I don't know what it is, but maybe they're willing to spend a couple bucks on live music. They're not willing to spend any money on recorded music. And so as musicians, we got to find a way around that. But, or go to a concert, La Crosse Symphony is a really fine orchestra. Take your date to a concert. Hear live music. Spend a couple hours. Spend an hour.
Right.
Get a recording that you really like, and just sit down and listen to it with some people when we can get back together with people.
Definitely.
I think that it doesn't take. It doesn't take that much. When I was 16, 17, I worked in a music store. This was 1972, 73. It's a long time ago. But I remember, records, LPs were $4.62, and 45s were 69 cents, and we'd have the top Billboard 45s, and people would come in if they wanted music. They came in and bought it.
Right. Right.
I mean, it was $4.62. It's funny I can remember that, but it was on the label. I saw it for so many years when I was in high school. Worked at this music store. But anyway, it's just funny how like, oh no, I'm not going to spend I'm not going to spend $5 on a cover charge to hear a band. I can just hear it on my phone. Well, yeah, but you got to kind of think about, well, it took a little bit to make this band happen. They don't, be willing to pay people for what you see and hear. I think I'm not just talking about music either. I'm talking about all the arts.
Exactly.
You could look it up. I don't know what the number is now, but Minnesota is actually pretty good with per capita arts spending.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Nationwide. I mean, we're pretty strong compared to like Wisconsin, especially. And that's part of the grant process. There's a lot of grant opportunities in Minnesota.
Right.
And I've written grants, and I was on the board of the, not the board, but the advisory where they, the panel, they called it the Southeastern Minnesota Arts Panel for a few years. And I'd see all these grant proposals coming in. There's some fantastic art going on in Minnesota. And so, I think that's maybe part of it is, hey, spend a few dollars, you don't have to spend a lot, but support people that you believe in. If you hear something you like, give them, support them. Go and hear them, or if they're going to stream something, if they have an opportunity they want $10, give them a couple bucks.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe that's the thing. I don't know.
I think that's a really great idea. Because I just kind of want to add to that. I did read about a study recently. Well, I don't think the study was recent, but I read about it recently that when people spend money on experience rather than objects, they become happier, So I'm thinking, spend that money on the concert. Go to the concert, buy the music or the album so you can listen to it, spend that money on experience and you'll be happier, right? Especially if it's art.
That's a great point. Yeah. Our oldest son has a company called Thrive Adventures.
Okay.
And what he does is he takes people all over the world, and he, not right now, obviously, but he's been all over the world, and that's part of his mantra is spend money on experiences, spend money on doing something that you're never going to forget. We went to New Zealand with him for 2 weeks back in 2015, I think it was. What a fantastic experience! I think that there's that's an interesting study. I'd be interested to see where you found that, because that's a real thing. I mean, it's definitely a thing where why do you need more stuff?
Right.
You don't need more stuff.
Right. Then you just need to find more places to put it, right?
Right. Yeah. You're right, man. No, and that's really ties in to the idea of supporting things that you really believe in. And the thing that's interesting about all of that is it's needed because of the fact that, like I say, there was that time where every record that came out, of course you had the record companies that were taking a big bite off of it, but they were also the people that put the spec out and paid the people to do the session to begin with. So they had money invested too. And you could get into the whole thing of payola to radio stations and all that stuff. That's all history. But the point is that if there's something you believe in and something you want to support, don't be afraid to do it. And there's plenty of stuff out there for sure.
Right.
There's plenty of stuff out there.
Well, that sounds like a really good note to leave our audience with, I think, if this support stuff, basically, any way that you can, and in new ways that we might not know about yet that are going to come in the future, I think, so.
Yeah, I mean, we know about GoFundMe and some of that stuff that's out there.
Right.
There's a lot of really good causes, obviously, and but the arts is one that is really in need right now. I think it's one of those things where okay, you got a bunch of music for free on Spotify. Well, maybe there's some people on that music you got for free that you want to try, that you want to support. And could people say, well, I spend my $10 a month or $12 a month, whatever it is, on Spotify? Yeah, but that's not going to the artist.
Right. It's not going to the artist, and $10, boy, albums used to be a lot more than that, and you get way more songs for your $10 than you used to. I've been into buying stuff. I buy their T-shirts and stuff because I know I'm not really spending any money on their music because I stream it. So
yeah.
I think there are other ways. There are ways to support each other, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. But we live in a wonderful community that way. We have a Winona. How long have you been here?
I've been here, off and on for the past 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, you get a sense, it takes about 10 years, I think. It took me about 10 years, but maybe some people get it sooner. But you get a sense of place here that is really pretty powerful after a while. You start to really realize what a real special place this is. And so if there's stuff that, that you want to keep happening, well, guess what? Spend $10.
Exactly. Help it to happen, right? Help it to continue.
Right, yeah.
It's up to all of us, I guess.
We've seen examples of that. We've seen two really great examples of that. And there are more, I'm sure. But the work that's been going on with Midwest Music Fest and the Shakespeare Festival, those are grassroots things that have been really, really neat to see. I think. Yeah,
and very powerful.
A real testament. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very powerful statement.
Sure. Definitely. And I've talked to a lot of students who aren't from here that see that stuff, and I think it really affects them in a positive way, and they really enjoy being here. So, well, Rich, we're going to have to cut this off now, but I'm really enjoying this conversation. Maybe we should do a little check-in in a few months and see how things are going.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out whether any of our prognostications or where things are going.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, it's nice talking to you, Bill. Good luck with the program.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Rich. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah,
take care.
You too.
Right,
bye-bye. Thanks again to Rich MacDonald for joining us today on Artbeat. Oh, I checked out that website Rich mentioned called Artist Share. It involves a really great crowd-funded way to support the arts. I would highly recommend checking it out at artistshare.com. For more conversations on art, tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've just heard from Professor Emeritus and performer Rich MacDonald on Artbeat.
Artbeat is written and produced by KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University. Visit us on the web at kqal.org.
Is art an important part of your life? Tune into Artbeat Tuesdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. Artbeat is made possible by a grant from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.